I've had a few questions recently about the copper stands that I've been using for my sculptures. People have been asking where I got them from. Well, actually, I didn't buy these from anywhere. These are stands that I've made myself. What they're made from is copper discs that I've bought from eBay, and I've just soldered some copper plumbing fittings onto them. So I'm just peeling off the plastic on the back here, and I think these are intended for engraving, so they're quite shiny, but they won't be quite so shiny once I'm done with them. So what I'm doing is using some 15mm couplers, and I've just made myself a cardboard template here so I can mark where the centre of the disc is. The way this works is you need to use some flux, which is this paste that I'm putting onto the pieces here. Where you put the flux is where the solder will go, so it effectively sort of creates a channel between the two pieces of metal. So I'm heating this up with a blowtorch, and the trick to this is to get both pieces of metal to the correct temperature so that the solder will melt when you touch it to the metal. And that can take a bit of trial and error. So you can see here I'm just touching the solder to the metal, and it's actually stuck to it, and it's pulled it slightly as I've moved the solder away, so it's not quite at the right temperature yet. But what you'll see is as this heats up, you'll see the solder slowly begins melting, then you should see it start flowing into the joint. So there you go, you can see it start flowing around the edge of the coupler there, so that means it's got to the right temperature. So all I'm doing now is just adding some additional solder to it to give it a bit more strength. It really doesn't take much though, so that's basically it. Now if you are doing this sort of thing, be careful. It's quite easy to forget that this thing's really hot and pick it up with your hands, so always use pliers if you're using this stuff. So the next step of this is to cut some 15mm copper pipe to length. This is going to form the stem of the stand. So the last step is just to add a loop of wire at the top, so there's something to attach your armature wire to. And for this I'm using 5mm copper pipe. I think this is meant to be used for car brake line, but I use it for pretty much everything these days, and you may have seen it most recently used in my Stranger Things Demogorgon sculpture. I built the armature for that out of this stuff. It's just really easy to shape, and being copper it means that I can solder it together very easily. So I'm just putting some flux on the loop there and putting that in place. So it's just a matter of heating that up and soldering it together. I'm using a slightly smaller blowtorch this time because it's a smaller piece. It doesn't really require so much heat, so I don't really need the large blowtorch for this. I can use the smaller one. Right, so there we go, one sculpture stand. I hope this is useful if you want to make your own. However, if you don't have access to a blowtorch or you don't want to risk setting everything on fire, I do have a few of these available in my Etsy store, so there's a link in the description, so there's that option too. So anyway, I hope this is pretty useful, and I'll see you next time.